Hey everyone, welcome to the Get Real podcast. We're so excited that you're with us. Each and every week, we're going to open up God's Word. We're going to have some discussion around what it means to live an intentional life. So let's listen in as we try to get real together.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Get Real podcast. My name is Lori Arnold, and I'm typically here with my good friend and pastor, Brandon Ginden. But today we've got a special treat as I'm here with the person who's usually on the other side of the camera, Bryan Jew, and his wife, Sarah. And we're going to continue in our series on healthy marriages. And I'm really excited about this particular one. If you haven't listened to the other ones, I encourage you to go back and listen or watch those. But today is special because I think they are the couple that has actually been married the shortest amount of time, but I think they've been together for quite a while. So we'll find out a little bit more about that later. But we're going to hop right in as we continue this series on healthy marriages. So you two, I'm so glad that you're here. I want everyone to know kind of how y'all met, just so they have a little bit more information.
I'll go.
Okay.
So Bryan and I met in high school. We were both in band, and that's how we met, right?
Yes, it is.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm like, right? There wasn't really much more to that.
No, that's when we met in high school, and we had some very similar friends, like kind of friend groups that we were running around with. So we knew of each other, but we were just kind of running in the same circles. There wasn't really anything beyond that initially.
Okay. Were y'all both in the church at this time?
Not at first.
Okay.
I started going to church because I had a crush on Bryan, and I knew he went to that church, and so I was like, might as well just go to this church and see. So I had kind of grown up in the Catholic church, off and on. And so the church that we started attending, or I started going to, was a non-denominational church.
Okay.
And that's kind of how we got closer and started talking more, was because we were both now attending this church together.
Yeah, that was big. And especially because there was that alignment from the beginning and that unity in terms of what we had for doctrine and what we believed to be real and biblical worldview and all of those things. Because I know for a lot of people that may not be the case, where maybe, one is Catholic and another is Protestant, or, not even the same the avenue of thinking. And so that really did set us up for success from the beginning with that unity. And there were certain things, even as, with anything with marriage, like family is very much involved with in-laws. And so part of the background in terms of religion with the Catholicism, and then like I was Episcopal kind of, and just kind of a hodgepodge. But all that to say that from the beginning, it kind of made us affirm more in who the other person was, because we had that unity in terms of our religious beliefs, and that kind of built from everything off of that.
Okay. So how long did y'all date before y'all got married?
Oh, I think we dated for 6 years.
Okay.
Or we were maybe 5 years, and then we got engaged for about a year. And then now we've been married for 4.
Oh, yay.
Yeah, it'll be 5 in November. So
That's cool. That's exciting.
Yeah.
So I know that one of the questions that has been asked has been, was there anything that you all did to kind of, are there any resources that you use? What are those? Are they people that you go to for help and guidance in your marriage, whether that was even before you got married, or what did that look like for the two of you?
I can go. So one of my biggest things was making sure that I set myself up for success to be the best husband that I could be. Okay. And so in terms of resources, there were 2 main things. One of them was obviously going to the scripture, but there was a book that I read called The Meaning of Marriage by Timothy Keller. And it's such a great book for me personally that helps with my perspective and worldview of what biblical marriage is. Sarah and I, one of the funny things is that we've done a lot of weddings, like filming them. I know you've sang at a lot of weddings before. And so you hear all through these ceremonies, love is patient, love is kind, wives submit to your husbands, husbands sacrifice like Christ does for the church. And that's great. Like, it's from scripture. That is God breathed. And so that is great enough for instruction. But it was great for me to read that book because it helped me put in right size, how am I supposed to operate as a husband to love my bride well?
Yeah.
And so that was a great book for me to read. Okay. And then also discipleship relationships. Like you said, I sit behind the camera a lot. And so I hear every conversation that you guys have, and discipleship is the number one thing where someone is sharing their life with me on how I can be not just a better Christ follower and help me grow towards spiritual maturity, but also how can I be a better husband and love my bride well.
Yeah.
And so that was the biggest thing, is having someone who walked beside me and helped me through being newly married, being in ministry, being, a good coworker. How do I be a good son-in-law and care for her family well? And it was just a lot of awesome things. And that his wife even got to disciple Sarah too, which is cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And she was just such a great resource for me. We had dated for a long time, but it felt like when we got married, so many challenges, more than what we had faced in our just dating relationship, had arose in that first year of marriage.
Yeah.
And so having somebody who could just walk through that with us and all of the pain we were feeling and all of the challenges we were feeling. Like, I know my dad passed away right before we got married.
Oh.
And then we had several family members pass away after we got married. And so it's just a really difficult time for us. And everything that we had prepared ourselves for prior to getting married, it was just the best thing to have somebody to walk with you through all of that, and navigate married life together. With them, and just living life with them and doing life with them.
And it was really cool too, because there were so many similarities in the couple that was discipling us and our situation. Some of the health complications that I was having in that first year of marriage, they've walked through that very, almost identically, which is kind of crazy. And just look at God doing that. But he was a pastor in ministry, and I was a director leading a ministry at the time. So a lot of similarities with that. And she was a teacher.
Yeah, she was a teacher.
Oh my gosh.
You were a teacher.
I was a teacher. I mean, she taught kinder and I teach freshmen, but we still can kind of relate.
Oh yeah. And there's just so many similarities that there wasn't just the, here's what I would do, here's what the Bible says, which is great, but there was also an empathy that they were able to have because they've also walked the same things that we were experiencing.
Yes.
And so the advice that they were able to give and man, here's how God worked in our lives through this season was so much more tailored to us because they've been in that same situation as well.
That's kind of a common thread that we've been having during this series, you know, is that even in the past episodes is we have people that are further ahead of us, a few steps ahead from where we're at, and they're able to better relate with us. We're able to better relate with them. So I think that's really neat. And I also picked up the fact that you said that this started before you started this discipleship relationship before the wedding even happened, so you didn't wait until the stuff hit the fan, to call for help and to get help and to know where to go. And I think that that's crucial and super important. So I love the way that it worked out so beautifully for both of you, just in the way God uniquely designed them and designed you and for y'all to be together. I think that's awesome. I love the way that happened.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna go a little deeper. Whenever you guys have any issues arise in the marriage, because it happens, right? What typically, this is kind of a broad question, maybe. Sorry, I'm putting it on the spot. What's your go-to response? What do you do to get out of that pickle typically?
When we have disagreements, I am not patient. It's not one of my characteristics, and I tend to be angry. And Bryan is just so opposite of me. And one of the advice that Josh gave us was never go to bed angry. And so no matter how hard I try to go to bed angry, Bryan doesn't allow it. Which is,
this is true. This is true.
It's healthy, right?
Yeah,
because we shouldn't harbor any hurt or anger towards our spouse. And so it is one of the best things because I don't have any resentment against him the next day. And it's just, communication is just key to talk through those things and talk about how you hurt me and how I feel about this. And
communication is huge in that. And I know you and Kevin talked about that last week, right? That communication, and specifically for us, what that looks like is in times of changing of season, which she's a school teacher.
Yeah.
And so that happens pretty cyclically, right? Like we know when summer happens, that's a season change. When she's on break, that's a season change. When she goes back to school, it's another change. And what she is expecting of me changes between those seasons. And so if, I mean, even for me, I can look at some of those times of strife, or maybe if we're not firing on the same cylinders, I can look and see, okay, is it December and like she's really stressed out with work and she's trying to put final grades in, but she's about to be on break. Her expectations of me change. And likewise, my expectations of her should also change. And so during those times of either disagreement or maybe we're not kind of aligned in certain things, communication is huge for us. And for me, I always try to make a point to have those, keystone conversations of, okay, you're going back to school. What are your expectations of me? Because if I don't do that and I keep doing the same things I'm going to do, that can lead to missed expectations, which leads to hurt.
Yeah.
And so just understanding that I can't read her mind. She can't read mine as much as sometimes I wish she would. Being able to do that is so key, because then I know what she's wanting of me.
Yeah.
And then we're able to kind of work together from there, and vice versa, the same thing. Because I know we work in ministry. And so there's those times too, where it's really busy, and the things that I'm able to put to the table aren't going to be the same for every season. And it's not fair to her if I don't tell her that.
Right. I love that you say that you are able to understand, but even more so the fact that you ask, what do you need from me in this time? And I think that's really important. It goes back to the communication, but also you mentioned expectations, and I mentioned that last time, like oftentimes we have these unrealistic expectations, and that typically is when a lot of conflict arises, is when expectations aren't being met. And the fact that you're asking, what can I do? What can I do to serve you better in this time is a huge thing. So I love that. I love that y'all do that.
Yeah. And it also changes, like for people who are listening, that they may not be in our position where, it's a teacher and someone who works at a church, but if you have kids, their seasons change as well. And so the needs of your spouse will also change as those change. And so just making sure that you have those touch points, and as these things are changing and as life, things happen, touching base with those things with your spouse has been big for us.
It's good. So I want to ask, are there any things in particular that you do that you kind of almost like hold sacred, like that? I know Kevin and I, we meet on Fridays for lunch. We make sure that we stop and connect during those times just to stay together and stay aligned. Are there any particular things like that kind of keep y'all together and on the same track that you do? Share a little bit about that.
Sure.
I feel like we're both really good at saying no to like things that will drain us or take away from time together. And I think that's something that's super important to both of us, is quality time.
Yeah.
Whether that just be like a chill weeknight in, we don't even have to go out, have a date, but it's just that intentional time alone, where even in a season of like really busyness and just like having something, we have at least one night where it's just us, and where we can just be us.
Yeah. And it's been pretty intentional in terms of the frequency of it. Because she's a teacher, I work in a church. We ain't got it like that to be able to go to, the Bahamas or something for these big retreats. But being able to find reproducible ways that we can still connect and touch base with each other in the everyday life. And so like she said, doing stuff at home is very accessible and reproducible for us to do. Now we also try to take time, annually to get away together where it's just us and in a different environment. It's not anything like a marriage retreat like you guys were talking about last week, but whether it's a vacation or just going camping or doing something like with our dogs, we love getting to do that stuff. But it's not us waiting until that point to be like, all right, let's revisit everything that we talked about, but finding easy and reproducible ways in the everyday that we can do that. Even down to like when she gets home from work or I get home from work, making sure that we have a little bit of time, even if it's during dinner or before we just like kind of start decompressing, of saying, like, how was your day? What did you do? There's not other distractions. We may be cooking dinner together, but we're not on our phones doing that, but making sure that we have those touch points in the everyday to be able to still be relational and intentional with each other.
It's good. Good. I want to go back to something we talked about at the beginning. We talked about it a little bit before we started filming, but you mentioned the people that were discipling you.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the things that y'all talked about? I'm not asking you to share like the exact things.
He said this now. Yeah.
But like some of the topics, because it was really neat for me to hear from you, just about the types of things that you talked about, because some people may be new to this. They don't know what discipleship looks like. And we might think that we just need a mentor that we can vent to or something. So I want to hear from you a little bit more of let them know what that sounds like.
Yeah, it was really interesting to me because there were so many things that I had a preconception of what you do share with other people. It's kind of taboo to talk about politics or physical intimacy with your spouse or finances. Mm-hmm. And for the guy that was discipling me, those things were on the table 100%. And that helped me so much, seeing his vulnerability, but also seeing, there's not this guarded or protected thing that around people's marriages, and there are sacred places of it, right? Yeah. But having an open door of saying like, here are some of the pitfalls that I have made. Here are some of the things that I have done that didn't work for me. And I want you to know that, because I also want you to grow in your relationship with your spouse and also help me grow towards spiritual maturity. One of the interesting things was, he sat me down, during one of our weekly meetings, and I was asking questions about finances. Like, we were newly married. And so like, how do I operate my finances? What does giving look like from that, in a real and authentic way? And so he opened up the spreadsheet, and I got to see all of their finances and their mortgage and their giving and stuff. And he's like, hey, don't show anyone this. I was like, sure.
That's awesome.
Sure.
Though.
But it was that real and authentic nature of what that looked like for him and how he sacrificially gave. And even down to the nitty gritty of like, how do you pay this? When do you do this? And it was just that real, authentic, genuine way that he showed me that he cares for me and also my relationship with my bride. And so nothing was off the table. And that was one of the ones that really stood out to me.
That's great.
Yeah. I mean, same, like we would talk about finances. We would talk about what parenting looked like. What did marriage look like before children came into the picture? Yeah. How do you find rest? Just all of the things. And the thing I was grateful most for was just like, they would just invite us into their home and it'd just be like, let's eat together. Let's just hang out. And it was just, a weekly time and space where we could just come together and just decompress and just talk and learn. And it was just very helpful. Having somebody, having a safe space, having somebody to learn and grow from, and then being able to take that and apply that into my own marriage.
Yeah, so good. Y'all said so many good things. Like we've talked about communication and expectations, and also having that safe place and intentionality, having intentionality with the time you spend with one another, as well as the intentionality that you put into the marriage even before the marriage happened, the intentionality you put in even before kids have come. So I think that's beautiful. I hope that our listeners, I hope that you have been encouraged by Sarah and Bryan, by the things that they have shared. I know that I have. They're super encouraging for me. And if you have enjoyed this episode, I do ask that you go back and listen to the other ones if you missed those, and that you'd share it with your friends, that you'd let people know about this, because we are truly passionate about living life and being real about it, and also living life with intentionality that glorifies God. And so we want to spread the word. We know that people have questions, and oftentimes it's not as hard as it may seem. Sometimes discipleship might even sound scary, but like Sarah just mentioned, they invited them in their home and they ate together and talked together, and it became a safe place where they could get together and share things that they would one day need in the future. And so I thank y'all so much for being here with us on this side, on the couch this time.
Next week I'll be back behind it, so don't worry. Yeah.
It's been great. But thanks so much, and we will see you next week.
Hey, thanks for joining us on the Get Real podcast today. My hope each and every week is that you're able to take the content, apply it to your life, that it becomes more of who you are and less of what you do, and that we live an intentional life together. If you're interested in supporting the work of ministry here at Real Life Texas, we'd like to invite you to do that by going to reallifetexas.org/give and supporting us today.